I've climbed up the Ranger Creek Trail before. In fact, I've talked about this trail before because I did a previous review called Ranger Creek Palisades, where I reviewed this trail as a couplet with the Palisades Trail, where I climbed up this trail and went down Palisades. But it was my friend Terry's birthday weekend, and his wife was kind enough to drive my car to the bottom or back to the bottom for me. So you know what? We decided we'd shuttle Ranger Creek because both Terry and I had climbed it before, and we were like, well, it's got to be a good descent, right? So why not? We've got a shuttle. So the Ranger Creek Trail is one of the famous 410 trails located near the entrance to Mount Rainier National Park. They're called the 410 trails because they all more or less descend to State Route 410. They're all steep and gnarly in some way, including Ranger Creek. So we shuttled up to the top of the 7250 road where the Dalles Ridge trailhead is located. The Dalles Ridge Trail connects with the Ranger Creek Trail. There was about 150 feet of climbing over about a half a mile along the ridgetop before we got to the Ranger Creek descent. And one thing that I can say for forest fires is that they sure do open up beautiful views out to the rest of the landscape. Even though the soil up here in late July was definitely blown out, especially since it's basically a fire pit, the scenery itself did make it all more than worthwhile. The ride starts at 5,300 feet of elevation, so if you're a lowlander like me, you'll definitely notice it in your lungs, but once again, you're shuttling this. It's fine. You'll be fine. Especially if you like, subscribe, and navigate to patreon.com/voiceovertrails and sign up to support informational content just like this. After the first half mile, the descending really starts on Ranger Creek. When you get to this intersection, you'll want to turn right to get on Ranger Creek proper. The fireweed up here is beautiful in the summertime, and it kind of makes you feel like you're like your little Misi Mouse, just sort of skittering across thick green shag carpet or something. There are also a lot of switchbacks up here that you're going to have to slow down for. The hardest part for me was keeping my eyes on the trail because there was so much scenery to my left I wanted to stare at, and the bench is very narrow, blown out, and pretty degraded in places. And you know how the bike tends to go wherever you're looking? So really, it's a miracle I made it down without injury. Did I mention that the bench up here near the top is very, very narrow? It's narrow and the hillside is steep. There are also lots of surprise compound features up here, like switchbacks accompanied by drops and lots of other little details you need to pay attention to in order to not die. Don't die here. You've still got a long way to go to get to the bottom. But seriously, I almost got dumped off the bike by unexpected tread obstacles at least 5 or 6 times. When you get to this flat area, you're at the intersection of the Palisades Trail and the Ranger Creek Trail, and honestly, for maximum enjoyment, you ought to just head to the right, go down the Palisades Trail. But we're not here to talk about the Palisades Trail. We're here to talk about the less interesting, well, it's not less interesting. We're here to talk about the sketchier, enjoyable in a different way, Ranger Creek Trail. There used to be a cabin of some sort up here on this flat area before the forest burned down a few years back. I bet it was really pretty. It was probably a pretty neat little cabin because it's sure a cool spot for one, especially when these trees were alive. Now, having climbed the Ranger Creek Trail before, I thought it would be, I thought it wouldn't be all that technical on the way down. I mean, if you can climb it, how hard can it possibly be to descend it? Am I right? I was wrong. I was so very wrong about that. See, the thing is, I got off to walk the bike a lot when I climbed this, but I'd assumed that was just because it was a hot day and I was weak. That wasn't the case. I mean, I might be weak. That could be true, but that wasn't the only reason I was walking the bike. I walked the bike up this because it's steep. The bench is degraded and slippery, and overall, it's a pretty sketchy trail. Seriously, this is a technical trail at the top. It's really technical, and it's a kind of technical that's like, it's just unpredictably slippery, it's bad. Just stay tuned. It's even more degraded than the first part was before the intersection. The switchbacks are steep, loose, tight, and they don't hook up. Add to that a lot of exposure to a very steep hill, root balls in the most inconvenient locations, and limited clearance to the side because of obstructions. I mean, this was all an area that burned. So the soil is degraded and it's like there's the bottom of a fire pit. Like you're just riding in the bottom of a fire pit. In other words, this trail was a lot more fun to descend than I was anticipating. I mean, it was fun. People fell, but there were no permanent injuries though. This feature, this switchback, was memorable to me because it was nearly impossible to climb when I was climbing up the trail, but like a fool, I assumed it would be easy to descend. I remember anticipating the switchback coming. It was slightly easier to descend it. While it was more like I just sort of slid down the thing. I just slid sideways. Now, don't be like Bradford here. Don't fall down the switchback. Be really careful. It's crazy. I don't even know how I got up this thing 2 summers ago. It was really, really hard to get the bike up this thing. Anyway, this bench isn't just blown out, it's disintegrating, and the soil is falling apart so much that it's slippery. That is until you get to the fire line, like where the dividing spot between where the forest was burning really hot and where it wasn't really burning at all. Anyway, the tread is in much better shape where it wasn't exposed to super high temperatures. Either way, you can ride on the slanty and pointy roots to the right or the disintegrating cribbing to the left. You really shouldn't descend this trail. It's a stupid descent. Don't go down this trail. That being said, we had an awful lot of fun descending this trail. For all the wrong reasons. If you do insist on doing stupid things, descending this trail with friends who maintain good humor through the suffering, because that's the only way you're going to have fun. Make sure you do it with friends who can laugh through the ridiculousness of this. You will have fun contemplating what a stupid thing it is you are all doing. Just bring your sense of humor. A good first aid kit, elbow pads, knee pads, and a helmet with a chin bar. Bring all of those things. Anyway, enough chit chat. Let's get going. Did I mention it gets a little bit better when you get out of the burn zone? I mean, it does, slightly, kind of. Really, a good share of the challenge riding this trail is just figuring out where to put your wheels. If you come to descend this, which you shouldn't, don't ride down this trail. But if you do, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I say it's just hard to know where to put your wheels. By the way, we heard that you like loose switchbacks, so we got you some more loose switchbacks. Enjoy. When you get to this spot, you're about halfway done with the descent. I remember getting to this point when I was climbing this the summer before I descended it and desperately wishing that this was the top and contemplating that I was only halfway done and cursing my stupid decision to climb this in the first place. But Palisades was so worth it that I forgot all about the pain and so carried on with the climbing, and I was glad I did. But oh man, the painful climbing if you're going up this is like after this spot. Had I only known. The group consensus about this was that we definitely like the Palisades descent way more than the Ranger Creek descent. Anyhow, the descent does mellow out slightly from the halfway point down, and the character of the forest through here changes quite a bit as well. This forest hasn't burned recently. That's really the major difference. It's not a giant fire pit. Also, the hillside isn't quite as steep, and that makes things actually downright flowy, at least in comparison to what we're dealing with higher up the mountain. I mean, in reality, it's a brake burner, but like compared to what you were just doing, it feels like a flow trail. Actually, it was good enough down here that by the time I'd gotten to the bottom, I forgot about how tricky everything was at the top. And the only reason I recall how sketchy the top of this trail is because I'm reviewing the video right now as I write this script. So I guess that's how good the bottom of this trail is, or what a long day this was, that I don't remember it being that bad. And the only reason I'm talking about how bad it was is because I have the video here to remind me of what we were actually experiencing. The switchbacks are still pretty tight, and it's mostly a brake burner, but it was still a fun time descending this. I do not regret our decision to ride this one bit at all. The challenge with the switchbacks on this section is to see if you can navigate them without dabbing. If you dab on these switchbacks, I will know. I will find out about it, and I will judge you for it. No dabbing on these switchbacks. That is your challenge. Anyway, there's not much else to say about this bottom section. This section just flows like crazy, and it feels so good. So honestly, I guess this trail is like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and the bottom part is Dr. Jekyll. Anyway, keep descending and enjoying the descentful flowiness of the Ranger Creek hardpack until you get here to the road. State Route 410. Like I said, the eponymous 410, the reason that these are called the 410 trails. And when you get to State Route 410, you need to cross the highway and ride south for a bit before you find a bridge across the White River to the Skookum Flats Trail, which I've already reviewed because that trail is required riding. Oh my gosh, Skookum Flats is so rad. It was so good. So you have to go ride that trail. Go watch that video. But my overall verdict about the Ranger Creek descent is that if you're going to go to the trouble of shuttling to the top of this trail, just ride Palisades instead. And if you've already ridden Palisades today and you find yourself up here for the second time, on the same day even, or the third time today, you should just ride Palisades again. Ranger Creek would be worth it if there were no other options. But there's Palisades, and it's another better option. So ride Palisades, not Ranger Creek. I'd like to take this moment to thank all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Lomi Goodness level sponsors Andy Suri, Brad Goodson, and Charles Kim. I'd also like to thank my Hero Dirt level sponsors earning their special mention at the end of this video: Bryce Ulrich, Devin Young, Edward Lanton, and Pedro Cantarini. If you'd like to join this list of informational content supporting Rangers, a creek of Rangers, Rangers of Creek. Oh man, I'm just riffing here. I'm making stuff up. Navigate to patreon.com/voiceovertrails and choose a sponsorship level that you feel is appropriate for the value that you get out of this channel. Now, get out there and go ride your bike.